So now we have learned the concept of variables. Let us go through a demo on Python variables. For this demo, I'll be using the Python interactive shell. And in Spider, the interactive shell is opened in the left-hand side of your screen, or sorry, in the right-hand side of your screen. And as we have seen before, the interactive shell is basically a place where you can type Python statements one at a time, and they get executed immediately after you type the statement. So we are working here with variables. So let me start by typing few variable names and give them some few values. So let me type a variable name, and I'll call this name equal to Joe. Let's type another variable name. So let's say that Joe is 22 years old, so age in years is equal to 22. And let's say Joe is a student, so he has a grade, and his grade is equal to 3.5. So remember, these are all assignment statements, and an assignment statement basically creates a box, and inside that box you have some value. If you want to see the value of the variable in the interactive shell, you just type the variable name. So if you can just type, if you type name here, you get the value Joe. And if I type the value grade, or if you type the name grade, you get the value 3.5. You can also see what is inside the variable by using the print function. So if you say print age, or sorry, if you say that's a wrong name, so let's call it, let's do it again. So print age in years, you get 22. Now, what happens if you try to create a variable that violates the rules that we have learned? So let's say, for example, I create a variable and I call this variable 2 times, and this is equal to 15. So remember, a Python variable cannot start with a number. So if we run this, what do we get? We get an invalid syntax, because remember, Python variables cannot start with numbers. So this is a wrong kind of variable, or it's an invalid variable. So we know that the variable name contains the name Joe. What happens if I do this? What if I say name equal to Juma? Okay. Now if I type the variable name, what do you think I get? Do I get Joe or do I get Juma? Well, I get the value Juma. The reason is because a variable can contain only one value. So when you assign the value Juma to the variable, the old content is removed and it is replaced by the new content. So the old value is replaced by the new value. And if you do the print, you can also display this using print. So if I say print name, I get the value Juma. Now, what happens if I type the variable? So we have already tried this previously. So if I go back up again in here, so I tried to do a print for something called age, but I didn't have a variable named age. So let me do this again. What happens if I type the name GPA? Okay, so let's try to see what is inside this variable GPA. What do you get? You get what we call a name error. Now this is a kind of semantics error. If you try to use a variable before you create it in Python, or before you assign it some value, then you have what we call a name error, and it is one kind of semantics errors that we have seen in the last lecture. What if I try to do this? So what if I type name? Do I have something in name? Okay, so what do you get? Well, again, it's giving you a name error, and it is telling you that the variable name with capital N is not defined in or it's not defined. So Python doesn't know anything about a variable called name with a capital N. The reason is because, as we have seen in the last lecture, that Python is case sensitive. So the value's name, or the variable name with a small n, is not the same as the variable name with capital N. What if I do the following? Name equal name, and then I type name. What do you expect what do you expect to see? Well, in this case, I see the value Jum'ah, because remember, what do we have inside name? We have the value Jum'ah, and now inside name with capital N, we also have the same value. So both the variables, so I have two variables now. One is name with small n, and the other variable is name with capital N, and both of them are pointing or holding the same value. In Python, variable names are kinds of identifiers, and a Python identifier is a name that we give to identify variables, functions, classes, modules, or other objects. This means whatever we want to give an entity name to is called an identifier. And we have seen already at least two predefined identifiers. And those are the predefined identifiers for the function print. So if you type print and click enter, you can see that Python recognizes, or the interpreter recognizes, this name as a function. So it's giving you function print. And we have seen also another function which is called input. Again, similarly, you get something a little bit long, but this is a name that Python can understand. So it's basically a name for something or for an object that Python recognizes. So what happens if you try to do the following? Print equal 10. Do you expect that Python will complain? So think about the rules. So a variable name must not start with or a variable name must not be a keyword, and print is not a keyword. A variable should also start with either an underscore or a letter, and in this case the print starts with a letter, and the rest of characters has to be either letters, numbers, or underscores, and that also applies to this variable name. So in terms of syntax, this is okay, and Python doesn't give you any syntax errors. However, what if you try to do the following? What if you try to use the print function to print something, to say print hello, for example? What happens? Well, you get a type error. The reason is because print is no longer a function. Print is now an integer, and we will see more about data types in a later video. However, print now is a number 10, and the number 10 cannot be used as a function. So while Python will not complain about you going and modifying what we call predefined identifiers, so you can modify things as print or input, you can assign them values as you want. So Python doesn't complain about that. However, your program is likely to encounter semantic errors such as the type error you're seeing in here. What if you do this by mistake? So let's say that you are working in the interactive shell, and by mistake you create a variable called print, or you override the value of print with some other object. What do you do? How do I get my old print function back? Well, it is simple. So one thing you can do, you can use the delete keyword. So del here is short for delete, and you type print. So what does this will do? It will delete the variable that you have just created here, and it will uncover your old print function. So once I have done that, now if you type print, you get back your print function, and now you can do the old print hello that we have been using so far. So this is a demo on Python variables. You should now know how to create variables and how you should declare them using the assignment statement.